Bob Costa, okay, some tough welcomes for President Michelle Obama. Leave that alone. Romney is running TV and print ads attacking Obama. Why is this?
Because Romney knows that Obama is very weak on the economy. But Republicans have to be careful, Larry. The far left, they're fed up with President Obama. And the Beltway liberals, they're apoplectic about the president's jobs bill going nowhere, the super committee falling apart. But in the opinion polls, the president's still pretty strong, in the mid-40s. So Republicans have to be careful. Liberals are rallying in the streets, but everything's not so bad for President Obama.
All right, so Romney on TV last night, I thought he did a very good job in an interview on Fox News. I'll just say that, Fox News. He did a good job. But I want to ask you, how's he doing on the ground? How's he doing with the Manchester Union leader? And how's he doing with all the polls? I know he wins some of the polls, but not all of them against Newt Gingrich.
Romney's doing very well. Why is this? It's because he's expressing a disappointment message about the president. He's not going at the president from a far-right angle. He's going at the economy. And his newest ad, just up in New Hampshire today, slams the president for how he's handled the economy. This is Romney's strategy. Be focused, have one approach, hammer Obama on the economy. Everything else is a distraction. And it's carrying.
Last one. It may work. Kelly Ayotte, Senator Kelly Ayotte. Romney mentioned her last night as a vice presidential candidate. Now, why do you think he singled her out? I know she was sitting next to him, but he didn't have to promo her for Veep. Why did he do that?
Well, one, it's a message to all the Tea Party conservatives that elected her in New Hampshire in 2010 that he's on their side. But two, she's a pro-life woman, a former prosecutor, and attorney general. Not the worst person to mention as a possible Veep.
All right, I think you got it on both counts. Pro-life Tea Party. Doesn't get any better for that for Mitt Romney. Robert Costa, as always, National Review. Thank you so much. Let's go and talk to our free marketeers. We've got Democratic strategist Simon Rosenberg. We have Ed Rogers, BGR Group chairman and former deputy assistant to George H.W. Bush, and Mona Charen, syndicated columnist. Now, before we dive in, a quick look at a piece of Romney's tough New Hampshire spot.
I'm confident that we can steer ourselves out of this crisis. But who's been in charge of the economy? We need a rescue plan for the middle class. We need to provide relief for homeowners. It's going to take a new direction. If we keep talking about the economy, we're going to lose.
All right. Tough stuff. Mona Charen, let me start with you on all this. Romney is making the case, as are others, that if Obama were engaged in these deficit negotiations, that would have turned out differently. I want to get your first take on that. You think there's any truth to it, or are we just so gridlocked nothing could happen?
Well, no. I mean, this was the whole point. He wanted the negotiations to fail because it's part of his strategy, which is to suggest that if not for the Republicans' attachment to their wealthy friends, something could have been done. But it's just that the Republicans are the creatures of the rich, and therefore we had no agreement. Therefore, he should be the...
And here's what I don't understand about that particular charge. The GOP put a $500 or $600 billion revenue increase on the table through the Senator Pat Toomey plan.
Oh, Larry, facts.
Right out of Simpson Bowles. So here's the president dissing Simpson Bowles, literally phoning it in from Hawaii, literally phoning it in one phone call to the deficit committee, and you've got Schoen and Kudlow saying he cannot govern. Is that fair? I want you all the way in on this. You first, Mona.
Well, he's not interested in governing. He's interested in campaigning. I mean, this is the most incredible abdication of leadership that we've seen in the last 12 months, where the president is completely disengaged from the most important domestic issue that we face, namely the debt.
And the best campaign right now would be for President Obama to be president, to be seen as an effective president, and therefore have a rationale for his re-election. He should be in the Rose Garden. He should be visiting Capitol Hill. He should be engaged in good governance and advocating a point of view. Instead, he's sort of wandering around the world and popping into New Hampshire and looking like a candidate. It's not flattering for him.
And he doesn't govern. He's always parceled it out to the hill.
Let me let Simon jump in. You're up against here, and I just want to ask you this specific question. A task as large as deficits, entitlements, tax reform, the economy. I worked in the Reagan administration, and I've been around government for a long time. I do not see, I say to you honestly, this is not a partisan question. How do you deal and solve a task this large if the president, the chief executive officer, is not engaged?
So first of all, in the first 2 years of the administration, he was criticized for doing too much, right? That he got too much done. They passed too much legislation, and now we're being told that he can't do enough, right? So I think
I don't acquiesce to that point.
But
anyway,
I think that was the main criticism levied against him in the first 2 years. This idea he can't govern is silly. We may disagree about whether what he's done is good or the idea that this guy hasn't done a good job in governing the country, I think, is just wrong.
He shoved one big bill down everybody's throat, health care. He hasn't passed but one budget since he's been in office.
So on this issue...
Look at the polls, Simon. I know polls may not be perfect, but the stuff that was put by Kudlow and Dougie Schoen, they're two Democratic pollsters.
I know them.
Obama's numbers, at best, he's in the low 40s. At worst, it's worse than that on the economy. What I'm saying is his strategy of not governing is not paying off.
But I don't, first of all, in the NBC poll that you guys just released a couple of weeks ago, he was beating Mitt Romney by the same margin he beat John McCain by 6 points, which would have been a landslide victory.
Well, that ain't much. I mean, I wouldn't point to that much.
49-43, I think Barack Obama will take...
The Republican runs better than Obama.
But 49-43, same margins as landslide victory in 2008, and the Democrats had a 20-point advantage in basic favorability over the Republicans in your own poll, Larry. So the polling is actually doing very well for the Democrats right now. The more that we debate the economy, the more the Republicans are dropping right now.
It is such tortured logic. But anyway, all right.
It's your own poll, Larry. It's your own poll.
Schoen and Kudlow don't matter. But just let me go to the generic point. He attacked Paul Ryan's budget personally and politically last spring.
Right.
Then he had a possible deal on the debt ceiling with John Boehner. This could have been the bipartisan ring that everybody wanted. And at the last minute, the president puts a $400 billion additional tax increase on top of the $800 billion tax increase. And Boehner walks out. And this time, for the final deficit super committee, he doesn't show up at all. Now, I ask you, what's behind this?
Well,
how do you govern a country like this?
Well, and furthermore, you know, earlier, before he did any of the things that you just mentioned, he completely disregarded his own commission, the Simpson-Bowles Commission, on how to cope with debts and deficits. So his consistency over time has been avoid the obvious problem that the country faces, and you know, even what I wanted to ask you before, do you think that it was leadership for Obama to hand over to Congress the stimulus bill, to hand over to Congress writing the health care bill, to hand over to Congress basically all of the policy content of his administration?
Some
is
of
that
it is
leadership?
just ideological. He has an ideological point of view that he wants to impose on the rest of us, either through neglect or through design.
Do you know, Ed Rogers, this is an interesting point. Mike Bloomberg is basically a liberal Democrat.
But a wise man.
Whacked.
Good governor.
He's a decent mayor sometimes, part of the time.
Governor,
not
small
all
G.
the time. He's not going to be governor. His career is coming to
like
an
I
end
said, small
as
G.
mayor. But I want to say this. Bloomberg blasted Obama for a lack of leadership and said, you cannot run the country without a chief executive. That's Bloomberg. Your take and then your take.
Yeah.
Well, what Obama is doing sort of offends common sense to me. I don't know why, either through their selfish political reasons or through a desire for good governance, why they don't see some good policy would be the best politics. I couldn't tell you what Obama's central 3 economic initiatives are. I don't know.
Simon, I'll give you the last word.
So first of all, I think the president was very involved in all of these negotiations throughout this entire process. So I reject...
From Hawaii.
I reject basically the premise. But I want to say one thing about the deficit talks. There are 3 things that have to get done, I think, to reduce the deficit. One is we've got to deal with entitlements, we've got to cut defense, and we've got to raise taxes. I know we disagree on that. I know we disagree on that. But the math just isn't there unless you do all 3. The Democrats have put all 3 on the table. The Republicans are resisting all 3. I think it's a fair thing. I think it's fair to say the president's been much more serious about deficit reduction this year than the Republicans.
We are fair, and we are balanced, and we gave you the last word on all that stuff. Much as I totally disagree.
I know, and I still like your tie.
Simon Rosenberg, great stuff. Ed Rogers, thanks for joining us. And Mona, it is always great to have you back on this panel. Coming up on Kudlow, the Fed announced for a new round of stress tests on U.S. banks.